Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors get a 117-114 victory over the Toronto Raptors at Chase Center on Thursday night. Apologies, I'm 5 minutes late. I was just watching Steve's post-game press conference, which was pretty important, obviously with the big, scary injury to Stephen Curry in the third quarter. If you guys haven't caught up with it, big hard fall there after driving to the basket. I don't know how it wasn't a foul, but whatever. Real crash landing on the floor, landed on his pelvic area, tailbone, spent some time on the floor, struggled to get up, hobbled back to the locker room eventually. That was late third quarter, didn't return. Warriors initially called it a pelvic contusion. So we're going to wait and see what happens. I suppose the update from Steve, there really is no update, but I suppose there's positive news in that Steph actually wanted to come back into the game and the Warriors told him not to. Initially, I feel like, okay, that's good news. He wanted to come back in. Can't be that bad, whatever. But I don't know. The way I think athletes usually, I suppose, think about their own health and well-being in those situations, like they're so team orientated and usually unselfish that they do want to come back in. And I know I'm not an elite athlete by any means, but I do know from playing sport that what you can do at the time in terms of, blood going through your body and adrenaline and stuff like that, what you can do in terms of going back into the game and continuing the game is a lot different to how your body wakes up the next morning and how it recovers in the days and weeks following. It can be, last year I played a quarter of football with a broken collarbone and I thought I might have been okay, but, turns out needed surgery out for, 3 months nearly. So these kind of things, you don't really know at the time how bad it is. And Steve said in the post-game press conference that Steph's off getting an MRI now. So hopefully things come back clear from that perspective. But I think there's little doubt that, and again, look, I'm not going to, hypothesize and speculate too much on how much time he's going to miss here, but you'd be surprised if he, was ready to go right for the next game. Like it feels like he's going to miss a couple here, and the fact the Warriors were able to pull out this victory with Steph exiting, I think is huge because they were in some trouble there. Like Toronto were playing really well. Golden State found themselves down 7 late in the third quarter, and thankfully Jimmy Butler kind of took over, I suppose. I wouldn't say he dominated the game, but he had his handprints all over the game for the rest of it. But he's still, I think he only shot 1 of 11 in the fourth quarter, so he wasn't efficient. But he had a triple double, had that massive block on Jamal Shed in the final 30 seconds, and the Warriors escape with a victory. They really turned the tap off from the Raptors offensively. They had 90 points with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, only scored 24 points over the final 15 minutes, which allowed the Warriors to obviously get that victory. Jimmy, a big part of it defensively. Draymond and Jimmy, that duo defensively, that could be one of the best defensive duos in the league, to be honest. And I don't know, it was a weird game because it was a very defensive minded game over the final 15 minutes. But the first half, both teams had it rolling offensively. The Raptors, the way they were guarding Steph, the way they were even guarding Jimmy, they were just giving Draymond and Quentin Post all they could eat from 3-point range. Draymond took 14 3-point attempts in this game, if you can believe that. 14 3-point attempts. Goes 5 of 14, made 4 threes. I think he was 4 of 8 in the first half or something like that. Just, again, got all he could eat from 3-point range. Quentin Post went 6 of 9. I think that was his second highest scoring game of his career with 18 points, all off threes off the bench in 22, 23 minutes. So that's kind of the way the Raptors were guarding the Warriors, particularly in the first half, was just making sure that everyone but Steph and Jimmy beat them, and the Warriors were doing a reasonable job at that. Found themselves up, 6, I think, at halftime, but the Raptors kind of took control in the third quarter, and then when you saw that Steph injury, you thought, geez, Golden State going to be pushing uphill here, but again, they were able to lock in defensively, and then Jimmy did enough with his playmaking and icing the game at the free throw line down the stretch there to get the job done, but we'll wait and see what happens with Steph, because obviously the Warriors have created a bit of a buffer on the Timberwolves here with this win, but the Clippers are actually the 7th seed now over the Timberwolves. They do have a bit of a harder schedule coming up. Of course, we've only got 12 regular season games left for the Warriors. So we'll wait and see, but, it could be anything for Steph. Could be anything but, from a game or two to the rest of the regular season at least. And who knows what will happen, come playoff time, and where the Warriors even end up at the end of the regular season. I'm going to get into your comments here, guys. I need to unplug my mouse. I've had it on the charger. So I'll do that, and then I'll get into your guys' comments from this game. Again, not a great one necessarily from a Warriors standpoint. Obviously, obviously outside the Steph injury, of course, that's not great to begin with. But outside of that, even just the fact they were only able to win by 3 against a pretty bad Raptors team. In saying that, Toronto, before their last 2 games, back-to-back losses, they had won 6 out of 7 games, so they were in a little bit of form. It must be said. Priscilla says Curry got a pelvic contusion. Recovery time depends on the person. Could be a couple of days, could be a couple of weeks. Yeah, we'll just wait and see. Who knows at this point? Knox says praying for Steph. Luckily, the schedule is still relatively light until April. Yeah, the Warriors, I mean, they do go on this 6-game road trip, but a lot of these games are certainly winnable. No doubt about that. So, you feel a lot better when you got Jimmy Butler there, right? And he was able to, again, not necessarily take over because he didn't shoot the ball efficiently, but everything kind of ran through him and the Warriors were able to get the job done. And so you feel a lot more comfortable about the Warriors going through a stint here without Steph when you've got Jimmy Butler. Kuminga's only just returned. And as up and down as JK was again today, like his isolation scoring might be important without Steph. I think that kind of isolation scoring is still a major question mark. I think there's way too many times. He had a reasonable game today, 16 points. But to me, there's still way too many times where he gets the ball and the ball just sticks and it doesn't move once it reaches his hands, which I think is a problem. But you might need that without Steph. So we're going to wait and see here. Robbie says, sucks that Curry went down, but it's great to see Jimmy be a floor general. Pods, Moody, and JK all did their pass and posts. It's just awesome. Yeah, Jimmy finished with, what did he have? I think he had 16, 11, and 12, 2 steals, 2 blocks, only 4 of 15 shooting, made 1 of his 2 threes. So again, the shooting wasn't great in the fourth quarter, but again, the playmaking was absolutely excellent. And you can just see the urgency. When Steph went down, the urgency among Jimmy Butler it just skyrocketed. And you could see him actually get quite frustrated at times in the fourth quarter with his own play. And then I don't think I've seen him more frustrated in a Warrior uniform than when he kind of drove. Guy Santos was in the corner. Guy left the corner as Jimmy left his feet. Jimmy threw it to the corner and Guy wasn't there anymore because he'd cut. And Jimmy really ripped into Guy. And I found it not funny, but I suppose it was a notable aspect that Steve pulled Guy out of the game about a minute after that happened. Like, he didn't last long. After that mistake of leaving the corner on a Jimmy drive, he yanked him rather quickly. So I found that a notable aspect. Guy Santos played just 10 minutes in this game. Loon played 8. Warriors, of course, shortening their rotation. They didn't have a full rotation available. Gary Payton II out due to knee soreness in this one. Empire says, Warriors have to win their next 4 games. They are winnable without Curry. What is the schedule? We've got coming up here the Hawks on Saturday, followed by the Heat, followed by the Pelicans, followed by the Spurs. See, there's not many. Sorry, I'm back. The microphone just decided to crap itself for a second there. Apologize. But yes, there's not many games coming up here with the Warriors playing the Hawks and then the Heat and then the Pelicans and then the Spurs over the next basically 10 days. So they've actually kind of got some time off. I mean, not time off, but like it's not a huge, 5 games in 7 days or 4 in 7 days or anything like that, which is a good thing, I suppose, with the Steph injury. Robbie says, also can't forget about Depoy Draymond. Yeah, a couple of his plays defensively in the fourth quarter, particularly that one where he got back on defense and stole the ball off the attempted alley-oop to Agbaji. That was a huge play. He ended up with 4 steals in this one. Raptors committed 23 turnovers, which was a pivotal aspect. Then says, shouldn't the Raptors be tanking? I mean, they should. They're obviously rested RJ Barrett in this game. I don't think they have any interest in bringing back Brandon Ingram after they obviously traded for him mid-season. They're probably just going to wait and have him be fully ready to go for next season. So that'll be interesting. I did question at one point whether they were actually going to bring their starters back in with a few minutes left there. They were kind of running an all-bench lineup until, what was it, the final, just having a look here. Yeah, 4:06 to play. Right, the Warriors went up 5, and I was like, is this going to be part of their tanking plan? They just don't bring back their starters. But Mobo, Castleton, and Agbaji went out quickly. Barnes and Pirtle all came back in and did play the remainder of the game. So they were trying to win, I suppose. Priscilla says, deja vu vibes with Curry getting injured in the last stretch before the playoffs, but instead of Wiggins, it's Butler. Yeah, helps. Helps that it's Jimmy now who can hopefully take over in this stretch. The next is in 2021, I think he had a pelvic fracture and was out for 2 weeks, probably why we didn't make the playoffs. Yeah, that was when he had that one in Houston, didn't he, where he kind of just stumbled backwards and fell into like the step or whatever. It's a weird one. Robbie said Jimmy had the quietest triple-double ever. Yeah, it was. I mean, his playmaking was excellent, don't get me wrong, and his defense down the stretch was excellent, but the scoring wasn't great, it must be said, and that'll need to improve here as we go forward. Then next is next 4 games, Hawks, Heat, Pelicans, and Spurs, 4-0. Need that revenge game from Jimmy in Miami. Yeah, I suppose the Pelicans with Zion at the moment, we saw them beat Minnesota yesterday. They're not necessarily easy beats as much as they should probably be tanking themselves. We'll wait and see because those 4 games are very winnable. They could easily go 4-0, but they could also lose a couple of those. Henry says, I'm buying a Jimmy Butler jersey tonight. I need to get one. Can you send one my way as well, please? Young West says, post getting the crowd pumped. Yeah, the 52nd overall pick, getting the crowd up and about there late third quarter. It was good to see, man. He's insane. He's like the dude came off the bench and took 10 shots, and one of them was from inside the arc, and he's 7 foot tall. It's extraordinary, but it's fantastic. 6 and 9 from deep. Every time he rips a 3, you think it's going in. It's legitimately a surprise. And I feel like he's the second best 3-point shooter on the team. I'm sorry, Buddy Hield, but I feel more confident with Quentin Post than I do with you. So, yeah, it's been a real revelation, hasn't it? Jackson says Draymond leading scorer again. Yeah, I mean, defense is just going to do this. They're going to load up on Steph and Jimmy and say, hey, Draymond hit shots, Pods hit shots. Pods was really good early, had 13 points by early in the second quarter, hit a few threes, and then kind of quietened down, and he had 2 points in the second half. Finished 15, 3 rebounds, 6 of 14, 3 of 7. Still played okay. It was a +7, but didn't do a whole lot in the second half necessarily. And then Post as well. I don't know when teams are going to start keying in on him. It's like, okay, we can allow, try and lock down on Steph and Jimmy as much as we can. But Quentin Post is probably the one player that's like, you cannot leave that guy open because you know it's going up and you know it's probably going in. Young West says Jimmy triple-double with 2 blocks and 2 steals. Robert says, I want Steph rest this game, but he's really so competitive. Charlie says Steve Kerr ended Steph Curry's career. Not sure. Okay, whatever. Then next is, if that had been Shea, it would have been a flagrant foul. Half of the other team ejected, 3-month suspension, 5 free throws, and possession of the ball. Just seeing here. No, there's no notifications here, I don't think, on... I'm just double checking. Any updates on Twitter about this Steph injury? I'll get to your comments a bit more while I do this. Robert says, Kuminga's game looking good, more simple now. Weird game because I thought he was actually, like, he was okay, but again, too many times where he just gets the ball on the perimeter and everyone just stands around and it's like, all right, it's time for me to barrel into 3 blokes and maybe get a whistle and, maybe I float one in, but other times I miss and the other team gets out in transition. Like it's a strange one, a real strange one that's, with Kuminga, because a lot of it's really good and a lot of it's not good at all. So I don't know. I'm still going to give him time. But I want to see much more like that game in his return against the Kings, where he was just getting points, so easily. Like he was just getting out in transition, cutting to the basket, really easy stuff, as opposed to these ones where he's really trying to get in his bag and trying to get to the basket himself, from well outside the 3-point line. Empire says, I'm glad Draymond and Pods made their shots in the first quarter, but Curry and Butler should not be combining 3 shot attempts in the first. Agree with that. Jay says Post was red hot and didn't play the last 8 minutes. Curry's the most stubborn coach in the league. What I will say about that is that it worked defensively. Okay, you've got to say that not having, and that's the issue with Quinton Post. That's why this guy's not playing 30 plus minutes. If Quinton Post was able to switch out and guard on the perimeter, this guy'd be playing 30 plus minutes already in the league. And people would be questioning why he wasn't taken top 10 in the draft. Really. That's the biggest issue for him. And as much as you want to criticize Steve for it, the facts are that they completely turned the tap off on Toronto's offense down the stretch. And I think part of that is being able to be versatile, being able to switch things, and having five, really high quality defenders out there. And unfortunately, Post is not at that point in his career. Had a really good block on Castleton in late in the third quarter, I think it was. That was fantastic. I like his improvement at the rim in terms of a rim protector, but when he gets switched out in the perimeter in terms of, closing out to space and stuff like that, it's still a struggle, right? And that's why he's not playing, he's playing 20, 25 minutes off the bench rather than 30, 35 minutes. Can you imagine if this guy is capable of switching out onto the perimeter and, was better closing out on some of these jump shots? Man, it'd be insane, right? And that's the thing, I suppose the positive is he's having a huge impact and there's still growth in his game. There's still a lot of growth defensively, and even some of the stuff I actually don't mind when he puts the ball on the floor a little bit. Like, he had a play where I don't know if he pump faked on the three, but he drove to the basket and the drive looked really good. He looked comfortable, looked normal, and then he blew the layup. And it's like some of the finishing around the basket could be better. I actually don't mind when he puts the ball on the floor a little bit. I don't think Steve wants him to do that much at this point of his career, but I don't think he's, a guy that you don't want, that you think's going to be an absolute disaster, nightmare when he puts it on the floor. He can pass the ball a little bit. So he's still got pretty good upside. Young West says, I like the banter between Draymond and Toronto's coach. Charlie says, just retire after this season. Jim, ain't nobody left in the league. Berserk Monk says, I was advocating for Steph taking this game off, and possibly the Hawks were lucky if this injury doesn't extend past a few days. Yeah, look, you could have rested him for this game. In saying that, you only just won. Steph was efficient. They were top blocking him all night. 17 points, 6 of 8 shooting, 2 of 4 from deep. Did miss 2 free throws, weirdly enough. He was efficient. I don't know. It's easier to say in hindsight, isn't it? Choboy says, Kerr said Steph wanted to go back in the game. Yeah, again, as I said at the start, I do question anyone that's been in that situation, whether you're an elite athlete or you're playing down at your local club or playing whatever sport, whatever level. There is an ability to be able to go back into a game when the adrenaline's already high, when you're already at that intensity and stuff like that, rather than, seeing what it is. Again, not to bring my own personal stories into it too much, but I've, had multiple times where, I've played through injuries and it feels fine at the time. I've played 3/4 of an Australian rules football game with a cracked patella and kind of felt fine and played reasonably well. And then the next morning I woke up and it was absolutely killing me. And went to the doctor, cracked patella. Last year, broke my collarbone within the first 5 minutes of an Aussie rules football game. Was the first game for the team, so I didn't want to necessarily come off the ground and look like a sook. So played the next 15 minutes for the rest of the quarter, and wasn't good. It didn't feel right at all, but kind of battled it out and tried to do some things, and then went off, and then it turns out broken collarbone. So I think there's certainly times where you can mask, the pain is masked a little bit at the time, and you can battle through things, and we've seen that with elite athletes all the time. But how Steph feels tomorrow and over the next few days is obviously going to be a big aspect to this. Robbie says, I think when the offense is still, JK needs to drive, then jump stop and look for the open man. Plays too fast sometimes. Yeah, that's a good point, I think. Robert says, Post as a burst 3-point shooter is already so good for 52nd pick. Yeah, he's one of the best, and I keep saying it, he's already one of the best big men shooters in the league, full stop. Not just about, he's one of the best rookie shooters in the league, and he's one of the best big men shooters in the league. Just go back to the Kuminga thing for a point. The issue I think with JK is that he just doesn't have the vision or the playmaking. So when he gets himself deep and he gets himself in a bit of trouble, he just doesn't have the ability to pass out of it like Jimmy does. Like Jimmy, you'll see when he drives, like he often does find himself in trouble, and he, was inefficient in this game, 4 or 15, missed some layups, missed some shots at the rim and stuff like that. But his ability to kick out to the corners or to the wing, whatever else, when he's in a bit of trouble on the drive, makes things like that's so much better than Kuminga, where it's like, okay, if he doesn't score here, it's going to be either a turnover or a missed shot that's as good as the turnover, and the other team's out in transition. Like there's no drive and kick to JK, like, or at least there's not enough of that. It's really all drive to score or drive to get fouled. And I think that's the biggest problem with him. Some of these drives to the basket would be fine if he was also kicking out and finding open shooters. I just feel like he doesn't do that anywhere near enough. And it's probably pretty hard to play with as a teammate, because you know that once the ball sticks in his hands, once he's sizing up his defender out in the perimeter, it's like, well, I just got to sit here and just wait and watch what happens. Maybe I can try and hustle in for an O board or something. Like, what are you actually doing as a teammate in that scenario? Because if you try and spot up, he's probably not finding you. And if you try and cut, he's probably not finding you. Like, as opposed to Jimmy, when he's on the drive, you know where you need to be. You know what you can do to be effective and valuable in that specific play. Kuminga just doesn't have that. And that's the biggest difference between JK and Jimmy, because, a lot of their drives, like they're similar in terms of they've got the physicality, the athleticism to get inside and finish. But Kuminga just doesn't have anywhere near. He doesn't have any playmaking vision, really, as opposed to a guy like Jimmy. Arminus says, got to play zone defense when Post is in the game. Yeah, you got to do different things defensively when Post is out there to try and limit his limitations, it must be said. Empire says they shouldn't bring Curry back until the playoffs or play in. Depends what the urgency is like. Obviously, if they want to finish, yeah, it's a balance. It's a super fine balance, because you don't want to rush Steph back. We know that. But at the same time, you also don't want to fall to 7th or 8th and have to potentially, play the Thunder, let's say, in the first round of the playoffs. That would be a bit of a nightmare. So you still want to try and get 6th here. I don't know. Like, I was thinking about it the other day. I think I said it on the post-game live the other day. 7th might not be horrific, because you might actually get to play the Rockets, and the Rockets might actually be the optimal matchup. But at the same time, you don't want to necessarily go through the playing tournament. Jackson says, thought with JK coming back, he would be a good pairing with Jimmy, while Dre pairs with Steph again, but JK almost needs a 5-out lineup to unclog the paint. I just want to see him play with Post more, because, yeah, I don't want Looney out there when Kuminga's out there. There's too much non-shooting threats, too many non-shooting threats when JK's on the floor, and he's a non-shooting threat himself. He took 5 threes today. The Raptors defense basically asked everyone, not named Steph and Jimmy, to hit shots. JK, again, some of his stuff, he had 16 points. And this is the thing, like, I don't think he had a good game at all, and he still had 16 points, right? Like, he's a natural scorer. Like, he's a talented scorer. Whether he can be efficient enough and whether he can do the other things well enough to be a real valuable piece, a guy that plays 25-plus minutes a game for this team, we're going to figure that out pretty soon here over the next 12 games. Berserkman says, JK and Jimmy kind of like to play in the same areas of the floor, and if you watch when he sits in the corner, defenders give him a lot of space and sit closer towards the paint. Yeah, I mean, he hit 1 corner 3 today, JK, that is, and that's going to be big. He was like, his 3-point shooting prior to when he got injured was actually heading in a pretty good direction. He was like 3.6 attempts per game. He was shooting like mid-30, 35, 36%, which is okay kind of thing. So if, I don't know, it's tough, because you look at 1 of 5 3-point shooting and you think to yourself, like, why is he taking 5 3-point attempts? But that's kind of what the Raptors were giving him. And at the same time, if he's going to be wide open, you kind of just got to take him. That's what I kind of think with him and Draymond, is like you got to take him at some point. If they're going to be wide open, I don't know. Like, same with Jimmy as well. Quentin Post is like wide open. I'm just like, you let that thing go, man, because I don't know why you're wide open in the first place. Defenses need to clue into you. But yeah, it's a tough balance with JK and Draymond, because if they're not going to take wide open looks, are you going to get better looks in that offense, particularly, I suppose, if, your final 10 seconds of the shot clock, like, then you just got to take him, don't you? It's going to be up to them to hit shots until the playoffs are about. Cho Boy says JK is not a smart player and he complains every time he drives to the basket. I think probably sometimes he does. He just doesn't get a superstar whistle. I think if you got Shea's whistle, JK's probably taking 10 free throws a game and it looks a lot better. But yeah. Robert says, who is a better matchup, 5th or 6th seed? Well, you don't know because you don't know who's finishing 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at the moment. So, I mean, they're within 2 games of Memphis now for the 5th seed. So they could push up, but does that actually help them if the Lakers or the Nuggets finish like 4th? I'd rather play the Nuggets. I'd rather play the Rockets, who are 2nd. I don't know. But Zemo says 6th spot is ideal as long as the Lakers don't end up as the 3rd seed. Don't want to see Denver at 3rd either. You really want to try and play Houston and Memphis. God, you might. There's going to come down to a point here, I think, at the end of the regular season where it might actually be beneficial to actually make the playing tournament, try and finish 7th, where it might actually help you. But then if you have to play the Clippers as a 7-8, then that's a problem because the Clippers have the wood over the Warriors, and then the Clippers beat you, and all of a sudden you're having to play the 9-10 game. And I don't know, like, what if Phoenix or Sacramento, could they beat you in a one-off game? Maybe. Like, you don't want to. That's why you don't want to flirt with the playing tournament as much as you might prefer to face the Rockets and the Nuggets or the Lakers in the first round. You can't flirt with the playing tournament because you could just play 2 bad games and you're done. You don't even make the playoffs. Warriors know all about that in 2021. Robbie says, I hope JK's main issue is that he isn't used to the offense because if it doesn't improve, he could be signed and traded. Yeah, I mean, we got weeks to figure it out here. I don't really want to talk too much about JK's future because, I mean, we know we're just going to have that a huge conversation about that once the season ends. Now, obviously, what happens between now and then will dictate that, no doubt. But yeah, I'm trying to give it time. Really, I'm trying to be optimistic and trying to give it time. Rage Now says, what's up, brother? Not much. Good to see the Warriors get a win. Big day. My Aussie Rules team, Collingwood, we play tonight. Friday night footy at the MCG. Looking forward to that. Hopefully we can get a second straight win after a big win last weekend. So 3rd game of the season. Hopefully we can move to 2-1. Then Dega says we play the Rockets if we stay 6th and they go to the 3rd seed. Well, that'd be ideal. If the Rockets go to 3rd and we finish 6th, that'd be good. Jackson says Moody's shooting has been poor last few games, but his defense is still good. Yeah, I don't have an issue with Moses. He was 0-5, 0-3 in this game. Did make 4-4 at the line, including 2 big ones late. His defense, I think, is what is actually changed Steve's mind. I think he's always been this near high 30s, 40% 3-point shooter. So I don't think it's anything offensively that's necessarily changed Steve's mind. I think it's more so defensively he's taken a big step here over recent weeks, and that's why he's a legitimate starter and playing 25, 30 minutes a game now. Robert says maybe Moody has no legs to shoot because of defense. I mean, it's a long season. I mean, shooting comes and goes. I'm waiting for the Quinton Post slight drop off shooting wise. I'm waiting for him to have a stretch of 5 or 6 games where he shoots 30%. It's just not coming though. Maybe this guy just shoots 40+% every game. Empire says, I don't want to play the Suns, Clippers, or Mavs in the play-in. Yeah, you don't want to flirt with it. You do not want to have any bar of that whatsoever. Berserk Monk says, Moody's rhythm has been affected because JK gets early shots at the start. JK took 9 shots, Moody took 2. Yeah, I mean, most is in the starting lineup. I suppose that it may be a factor, the idea that, okay, well, Kuminga comes back and then that's, 15 shots a game. We took 15 this game. That's a set amount of shots that have to come off someone else, and maybe that's off Moody. Yeah, potentially a factor. Logan says, I'm still pissed about the Nuggets game. That should have been a perfect 7-0 homestand. The Warriors should be up to, what would it be, a 10, 11 game winning streak, something like that. They're now 16-2 with Butler. That should be 17-1, and it should be 18-0 really. They lost that game to the Mavericks. If you look at their recent losses, they're just terrible losses. That Mavs game The Philly game where Quentin Grimes went for 80 points. Felt like that anyway. And then the one on Monday against the Nuggets. Some bad losses, but they're also just, 16-3 in their last 19 games or whatever. So you can't complain too much. And going 6-1 on this homestand is excellent. Berserk Monk says Moody took 5, JK took 15. That's in regard to field goal attempts. Yeah, but that's always going to be like JK can create for himself. Moody is still a guy, like he's a catch and shoot guy, which is fine. Like that's what the Warriors need, catch and shoot guys. You could actually say that, I know a lot of you guys are saying, well, I'd rather have Cam Johnson over Kuminga right now as another catch and shoot guy. And you might be right. Like you might be right. The Warriors need a catch and shoot guy. So that's Moody plays a perfect role for this team, but at the same time, like he's never going to necessarily take more shots than Kuminga because Kuminga does, create for himself, and why he's in there, that's kind of his job, I suppose. You would like him to get easy buckets as well. But when Steph's out of the ball game, particularly, and we've seen that the last 2 games, like they kind of do need Kuminga's isolation scoring. I would just like it if he had a little bit more in terms of playmaking vision when he does drive, rather than, hey, I'm driving to score and score only, and if I don't score, then and if I don't get fouled, then I'm either turning the ball over or I'm missing it, and it's going back in transition. Henry says Pods hit a couple of clutch shots too. I feel Pods and Butler are cut from the same cloth too, both in demeanor and playmaking style, natural born leaders. Good point. I think if you ask Jimmy right now, he's preferring to play with Pods than he is with JK. I think the chemistry with JK is they're still trying to figure that out. Robert says I wanted to forget that Nuggets game. Logan says ideally Rockets drop to 13, we say 6. Agree with that. Jackson says, will Armstrong and Key get some playing time with the big club as 2 ways this season? I don't think so. There's 12 games left. They're just sitting out with Santa Cruz at the moment. Santa Cruz are on a 6-game win streak of their own. They lost 5 games in a row. Now they're on a 6-game win streak. Had back-to-back wins over the Texas Legends. Shout out Taron Armstrong, who had his first double-double today. He had 15, 6, and 12. The Warriors won, I think, 131, 116 or something like. Jackson Rode nearly had a triple-double and had 5 steals as well. Key's obviously been in impressive form. Didn't have an overly efficient game today, but has obviously been lighting up, particularly defensively in the G League. So I think any guy you don't see in the rotation right now is just not going to, like, I'm assuming Kevin Knox is going to get signed here in the next couple of days. He's not going to get much opportunity, you wouldn't have thought, unless there's injuries that pile up here, which would be a big problem. Trace Jackson Davis, to me, like, he's done. He had 4 minutes the other day, but like, you're not that guy's barely played at all, and you're not going to bring him back right at this point in the season. Like, this is who you are. This is what you've got. You've got 11 guys, which is more than enough. And it's more than enough even if 1 or 2 guys get injured, right? You got 11 guys. It's the starting 5, and it's Kuminga, and it's Santos, and it's Hill, and it's Post, and it's Looney, and it's Gary Payton II. Right, and that's, you're going to mix and match those 11 guys. There's going to be nights, I think, where Loon shouldn't play at all. There's going to be nights, I think, where Gee probably shouldn't play at all. Those 2 are probably the first 2 out, I think, and maybe you shorten the rotation to 9 come playoff time. We'll wait and see. Robbie says, yeah, I agree that we have to be patient with JK because he's still only 22 and he's still figuring it out with a new team. We have to be patient in terms of the injury, I think. I think the youth thing, I know he's only 22. He's also 4 years in. So, I mean, how patient can you be? He's like 3 years younger than Post, which is hilarious. And I do still think that's a factor in it. Like, he is, from an age perspective, he's very young. So I still think that's a factor. But at the same time, you've just traded for Jimmy Butler. You do have championship aspirations. So we can't really have too much time here where we're experimenting, figuring out whether JK's the guy or not that you want to pay $30+ million to. What I will say is, yes, you got to be patient in terms of the injury. 31 games off. I think anyone's going to be rusty after that. You've brought in Jimmy Butler, which is obviously a huge new piece that JK needs to integrate with. Same with Quentin Post, who had not played at all when Kuminga got injured. So does deserve some patience there, I think. Berserk Monk says, will Jimmy have to play 37+ minutes in a game with Steph out? Well, he's essentially going to be the point guard, really. I'd load up Jimmy Butler assists over the next few games if Steph's out, if Steph's sitting. Henry says, what's your opinion, Lucas settling down with the Lakers and making Jackson Hayes look amazing? Lakers, I mean, they lost today. They were sitting all their guys against the Bucks, but they look pretty good. They're dangerous to me. I don't want to play them. I don't think anyone wants to play LeBron and Luka in a playoff series. Not for mine. In a very similar way as like other teams would be looking at the Warriors and not wanting to play Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond. Like, I think you're looking around and thinking, yeah, Houston, I know they've been very good. They're immensely talented, but they've got very little playoff experience. That's the team I think everyone wants to face, right? Of the top 6 seeds right now in the West. I think it's probably them, and then it's probably Memphis. Like, Memphis aren't playing very well at the moment. Jazz had a like up and down season. You know, I think it's Houston. If you kind of had to do to me, if you had to do like who would you least want to play in the playoffs, I think it would probably go. You'd have to have OKC 1 because they've been so dominant. The Lakers, I think, would be 2. I think the Nuggets would be 3. This is it from a Warrior standpoint. OKC, Lakers, Denver, Minnesota at 4, and then like Houston and Memphis at 5 and 6. That'd be maybe even you'd probably prefer to play you'd probably less prefer to play the Clippers. Like if the Clippers randomly, now you're not going to face them in a first round matchup. Neither are you going to face the Timberwolves. But if you were just working out matchups here, I'm sure the Warriors would probably prefer to play the Rockets and the Grizzlies over the Clippers. I don't know. It's a weird one. Empire says Warriors should sign Blake Hinson this offseason. They should, and I feel like they will because Key is not eligible for a 2-way contract next season. So I feel like he's Blake Hinson 2-way contract. Look out for that in the offseason. Been really good in the G League recently. Henry says, I wish Ted played today, though, considering GP2 is out. I don't see why Steve could have put Trace in for those minutes at least. TJD, you meant, not Ted. Yeah, I think he's done with TJD for the season. At least for the season. We'll see what happens following that. But it's when he hasn't played at all. Like he played 1 G League game. He's barely played for 6 weeks, couple of months here. It's hard to bring him back this late in the season. Berserk Monk says, I almost feel like JK is similar to Giddy situational-wise. Didn't fit next to SGA, but he was a big guy, talented, and only 22. OKC traded youth potential for a win now veteran in Caruso. Good comparison. Don't mind it. Jackson says Armstrong has really adapted to the G League game. Want to see how he plays at the NBA level next season. I mean, hopefully he returns. I don't know what the Santa Cruz schedule's looking like, but hopefully there's a few games where they actually join up with Golden State and are active for games, and maybe there's a blowout win or a blowout loss maybe, and you get to see them in the fourth quarter. Robert says, I don't want to go against Lakers and the rest of the first matchup. Henry says, Lakers look scary and I didn't want to admit it. It's just a stupid nightmare to live. I still think we can win because we have Butler. Here's just a eureka for our team. Harmon says, send TJD to Santa Cruz and activate Armstrong. Might have to if Steph's out for a period. Because what are we doing if Steph's out for a period in terms of point guard minutes? Is it just Jimmy and Pods? I'm not thrilled about Pat Spencer. Do we have to bring Taron Armstrong up as an option? Maybe. Henry says, Blake Hinson hits it from deep, bro. Oh, my God. He has the confidence of a bully baller in the paint, too. Almost like Julius Randle, only he has Steph's range. Julius Randle with Steph's range. Might be the best baller in the league. That's an MVP candidate. Logan says, Jimmy still hasn't got that mid-range going yet. Another level to reach for him. Yeah, there's plenty to improve on for the team and a lot of guys from an individual aspect. Jimmy, not overly efficient. Still hasn't had that huge scoring game yet. What is his best is still just 25, I think, which he got in his debut game with the Warriors. Moses hasn't been shooting the ball great recently. Draymond, I think, is playing pretty well at the moment. Pods, he's playing well, should only improve after the 5-game absence. Kuminga, we've talked extensively about. Buddy, not great at the moment, but it's just kind of Buddy healed. And Post is playing pretty well at the moment, but has plenty of improvement in his game, particularly defensively. So a lot of room for improvement for the team and guys individually. I'm going to finish it up there, guys. Been going for 40 minutes here. Thank you very much to those of you that have tuned in and commented. Thanks to those of you that are watching on replay. as well, or listening via your podcast feed. Warriors play on Saturday against the Atlanta Hawks, first game of a 6-game road trip. Looking forward to that one. We'll see what happens with Steph. Fingers crossed that it's not too bad and he doesn't miss too much time. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you haven't followed me on Twitter/X, POK252, that's POK252, that would also be appreciated. I'm going to go, and it's nearly 5 p.m. my time here in Australia. I'm going to go make some dinner, sit down on the couch, probably do some writing. You can check out my coverage on bluemanhoop.com and hopefully sit down and watch a Collingwood win over not the Western Bulldogs. They've changed their name to Footscray for the weekend. So looking forward to that one. Hopefully we can get the Warriors Pies double, because there's nothing better than that to start off the weekend. Thanks again, guys.